Our man, the Pope.
Yeah, he was horny on Maine. So it shows that this quarantine has worn down even the holiest of us can't help but like be liking pictures and shit.
I just can't even help the irony that it's this Instagram model. There's clearly an adult. It's definitely, a queen above 18.
No, that's actually the ironic part. It's clearly an adult.
But it's but she is dressed as a schoolgirl, which is just nobody, obviously the irony is not lost on anyone.
Let's just be happy that it's of age female, and I mean, more power to him. Like, the thing people like about Pope Francis is that he's supposedly more liberal, quote unquote, than previous popes. So if he's trying to normalize being horny on Maine, then more power to him.
I really I don't know. I really do want to know if it was because they sort of try to downplay it, obviously, as they would do in the media, that he has a team of people that manages his social media accounts, and that, of course, the Pope didn't like this schoolgirl booty. But I struggle to believe that. I feel like if it was your job on the line, I feel like you wouldn't be watching porn at the Vatican. Number one,
people were watching porn on CNN. During the whole election thing, someone had Pornhub open. Everyone is a fucking shameless coomer these days.
I want to bring in a little. This is a clip of another preacher being asked. His name is Father Tim. He is a TikTok preacher, and he answers questions on TikTok.
Hi there, it's Father Tim. I've been getting a few questions now. Well, this one is a bit challenging. They asked me. They said, Father Tim, do you ever get horny? I say, that's a tough one because I tell you what, some of the women that I see on TikTok, just to cut to the chase, yes, all right, I do. I want to be honest. There's the answer to that question. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other.
Take care of each other, get it? I don't think he intended that joke.
That is half an answer to that question, isn't it? That is not the full answer to that question.
No.
Why do we care, though? I mean, it's unnatural.
I care because I really love hearing the person with an Irish accent saying, yeah, I guess I do get horny. Basically, it's funny.
I mean, it's unnatural to have a vow of celibacy as a viable adult male. And I know that there are probably people in the asexual community that are going to be pissed off at me, but I'm not talking about you.
Well, they're fine. They don't have to be virile. All of us other humans have to be virile.
Yeah, all of us we have to be virile. So
we have to take our vitamins and our nutrients in order to maintain that male virility.
Yes, and also your female virility, super female vitality.
Yeah, I just don't. I think that Alex Jones only sells the male ones, but I don't. If he sells the female,
he does.
He's got female. Okay,
yeah. He's got
it all covered.
Yeah, he's got it all. He has the best business model that I've observed for a really long time. But that's a conversation for a different day.
I don't know if they're still sainthooding people, if the modern day. But I feel like if you got a load from the Pope, that would kind of give you blessing beyond wine and communion, right? You would kind of ascend more holy than normal. Maybe not holier than holy and you're a saint, but at least you're on the way there receiving the blessing from a pope like that.
Actually, according to the Vedic tradition, semen retention does actually give you superpowers. So there's a form of it's a yogic practice where you edge, and ejaculation basically it gets rid of your chi, your vital essence. But keeping that sexual energy in, even though you're excited, actually is supposed to make you more creative and more efficient and all that shit. So
that's what all the incels say about why they do no nut November.
Well, it's not 100% wrong. You shouldn't be a coomer.
My point wasn't that he's holier for doing that. I'm saying that this model would be holy if the cum got on her, that she would then become holy.
No, I don't think that's how it works, Jake.
Receive the sacrament. She's blessed by the Lord.
Oh, God, gross.
There's one other element of this that I think is just wonderful, and it's that, when you see the Pope account a picture like that, there's a plausible deniability. You can say the Pope's staff, some horny guy on the Pope's staff did that. The piece of news that came up not long after that, which is that the Pope himself is under investigation for it. It just completely removes that. It's like, no, we know the Pope uses his Instagram account.
Why would they need to investigate him for being horny is what I want to know. Like it wasn't like it was a child. Like,
no, but it's still a shame on the church, isn't it? It's still
no,
like,
they're specifically investigating him because it wasn't a child. Like, what are you doing? We know.
You know the rules.
Listen, this is the thing that we use to keep everybody's secrets under wrap. This is the thing that we use to keep all the popes under control, and you're undermining it by looking at adults? What the fuck is wrong with you?
Well, I know he's a super progressive pope, and he's like chatted shit about capitalism and fucking done and talked a lot of like cool, good stuff actually. So maybe it was his sort of way of trying to lead by example and show, you know, the rest of the papistry that they don't have to fuck, you know, minors and children, that they could just spaff off on Instagram, get on TikTok. There's plenty of thoughts out there for you to kind of beat your meat to.
And you don't even have to go to the porn sites. You just go to the regular sites. Like, go to Instagram. It's basically porno.
And if the Pope's doing it, if the Pope's beating his meat on Instagram, then surely it's good enough for you, right? You don't need to delve into children.
Consummatum est. It is done.
Thou shalt criticize capitalism and thou shalt cum. And, you know, I think that it's really good to see the Pope breaking from tradition in this way. I think it's quite refreshing.
Yeah, but all that really means is that the Pope has become like a bread tube fan. Like, this is, like that's all he's doing. He's talking about capitalism and whacking off on fucking social media.
Oh my God, that's so true. I'm sorry. Like, it's dark, but it's kind of true that the Pope has basically become bread tube at this point.
The Pope kind of like disavowing capitalism and you know, saying it's like the major evil in the world today. Does that mean that this communist revolution will be ordained by God?
We have the mandate of heaven.
We are on a mission from God. Is that what like the Pope is trying to tell us?
That might be why they're investigating him. Like they've found their way to get rid of this progressive Pope.
They're like,
this one whacks off to fucking women? What the fuck? No, we can't have that out there. Let's get rid of the one. And it's not to have anything to do with capitalism or any of that shit he's talking about. It's the women he's jacking off to online.
They found out he started a choir boys union and he was starting a movement and they weren't happy about it.
On that cum-soaked note, welcome to Low Society.
Open up the notebook and it's just like, oh no. Why did someone do this?
My diary entry was particularly sexy that day, and you know,
someone's been reading it. Someone who produces cum.
On that cum-soaked note, welcome to Low Society. If you're listening to us on iTunes, give us 5 stars. If you're fucking got money and you want to give it to us so that you can get bonus episodes, give us money on Patreon. We appreciate it. If you want to check out our Reddit,
we don't do sponsorships, we don't do ads, but that's how we fucking pay for that. Everything.
Yeah.
Like we depend on you all, and we thank you all also.
And we love you as well. And if you're good enough, maybe I'll toss you off for like $100, like $100 Patreon. You get
a notebook full of particularly sexy notes to jack off into.
That's actually a better deal. We'll personally handwrite you sexy notes so that you can jack off into it. It'll be so hot.
We'll make you a joy video.
What now?
Jerk off.
JOI, the jack off instructional videos.
I've never heard of this. I'm so innocent.
This is why, like I say, Angie sheltered.
How do you know what that is without being on Twitter, Jake?
What? I've been on porn websites. Like,
Mr. Fancy. Fucking.
It's not.
I've been on porn
instructions.
Well, why would you need jack off instructions if you already know how to?
You know how to.
Some people don't know.
Yeah,
that's what it is. It's really just that some people don't know.
How do some people not know?
It's not even some people don't know. It's more like a POV. It's more like a. You're
like a mean older brother. You like always you think I'm like your like gullible younger sister, and you're always like mean to me, and you always think I don't know cool things, but I do. I know cool things.
I know cool things like jack off instructional videos. I know those things.
What is it? Tell me what it is.
Well, it's like a POV of like, you know, a woman telling you how to rub it, and when she's doing her bits, and she's like telling you when you should be finishing and
It's
whatever.
for people who really like women and also tutorials.
Tutorials specifically. The tutorial part is the hottest part.
Hard emphasis on tutorials.
Oh dear. Well, speaking of like trad cath shit, like there's been this massive sort of like weird like corner resurgence of like trad cath shit on the left and also on the right. And I'm just sort of noticing this like weird yearning for tradition or traditional forms as a whole, but in this really hollow kind of vapid aesthetic way. It's like kind of the reason why stuff like cottagecore is popular, which I've talked about before, and stuff like the whole trad wife meme and like all of these different sort of memes, the whole daddy thing. Like people are really yearning for traditional values. Even the people who claim to be like really progressive or super, you know, subversive and edgy or whatever, there seems to be this sort of craving for structure and community, but then also a massive disdain and hatred for those things and a suspicion of those things. So you end up getting these really perverse aesthetic forms of like trad worship, which is really, really like disturbing.
You end up with that kid. Do you remember those old videos of the kid doing the freakouts and like he jumps all over and flops all over the bed and then puts the remote control up his butt? That's basically like what the left looks like to most people. And then they're also kind of trying to start doing this trad cat
What are
shit.
the examples of that on the left though?
So there's like the weird like mommy shit. Like there's this sort of strange Oedipal fixation when it comes to sort of women on the left or women who are perceived on the left, like the whole mamala thing.
Mamala is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Like it's that mama bear bullshit. Like for some reason they've decided that Kamala is this like amazing mother figure when like she's a fucking lawyer and that's like the thing that like we've all known her as, and then she's kind of laughs like an evil person a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I don't
people
understand.
have
Like,
referred to like people refer to the people who they like as mommies and daddies, like even on the left, and it's just it's Oedipal, and it's even happened to me, like where people will say, "Oh, mommy," and it's like, are you fucking insane? Like, get the fuck away. It's been happening to me since I started making videos, but it's like this weird yearning for like figures.
Mom G speaks. That's your new
Mom
name.
G speaks. Oh God,
just so that everyone knows. Like as when you at her on Twitter, you say Mom G speaks.
No, it's horrible. Fucking
That's
gross.
your new
Get off my
username
tits.
at Mom G. I'm gonna register that and start tweeting as you.
It's just no, please don't do that. Don't start that off.
Everyone, call me Mommy,
No,
please.
don't do that,
and
please.
Send.
No, gross. Call Peter daddy then if you're gonna do that shit. Don't call me.
No,
fucking mommy.
don't
It's
do
fucking
that.
weird.
Like, I'm joking. I don't like that at all. That's
I don't like it. It's gross. It's weird. But it just shows
People
that there's
do
this sort
that
of-
and they replace the A in daddy with an X. And I think that like I don't like it that way either.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Like that doesn't make it better.
Do you think that it's all because like I don't know, it's because my parents are still together and I've got quite a good relationship with my parents, as weird as they are and whatever, and as you know the trying times we've had or whatever, I still have a great relationship with them. I think anyway. But do you feel like most people in our generation just don't have that kind of relationship with their parents anymore?
It's possible.
Because
think
it's
there's
like a
such
lot
a-
more broken homes, a lot more all sorts of
I
things.
think there's that, but there's also such a huge divide in consciousness because of how technology has evolved and also how culture has shifted because of like our material dynamics. So most people view their parents as aliens because the shit that they fill their heads with and that they talk about online and the weird niche cultures that they get involved with are so divorced from the sort of what you would perceive as mundane, basic reality that their parents live, that they see their parents as like completely alien, and their parents also see them as completely alien too. And I think that that's really sad because I went
Like I
through the
said,
same.
that kid who puts the remote up his butt during the
Yeah,
freakout.
basically,
They all see,
exactly.
that's what everybody sees when they look at the left.
Yeah.
Like, no,
No,
that's not. Don't want that. Don't want
no,
that
thanks.
for me.
No. If it was my child, I would definitely be sending them to military school. That's all I'm saying.
I do feel
No
like
remote controls there.
Not even one.
I do feel like our generation does feel sort of, I don't know, like materially isolated from the previous generation probably more than ever before. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's just my, like, because I'm a young person I would think that, but
I think that
but,
tech
like,
probably contributes to it. So I think you've definitely got something there.
well, I mean, just even in the way that, like, you know, I'm 27 like this weekend or whatever, and
Baby.
Happy
Aw,
birthday.
thank you.
Everybody tell Daddy happy birthday at Low
Birthday,
Society
Daddy.
and on Reddit.
But I mean, but still, I mean, so my dad had me when he was like 27, and, like, you know, my parents had a house and, like, whatever. I just feel like that. I don't know what decisions I could have made in my life to have made that material reality a reality. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and so
No, I totally get what you mean.
it's like it is a totally different life. And just the whole way the internet as well has just completely reshaped social contracts and everything in between. It feels like it's a life you can't even relate to, that, like, your parents lived, basically.
But also, I think that there's also a sense of resentment there, because instead of people really facing, because there's the whole reject tradition, embrace modernity kind of thing. And it's like family, children, all of those things are seen as like these weird inhibiting factors. And I mean, the family structure has had oppressive elements to it, but we've sort of thrown the baby out with the bathwater in that regard, where the positive things that you get from community and family are sort of disregarded because of some of the more difficult or problematic elements. And then you also have people who are just purely anti-natalist and who look down on people who make the choice to have family in their lives. There are some people who genuinely don't want that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like at other points in human history, like people were more acutely aware of mortality and aging and getting old and dying. And they knew that family was sort of a way of making sure you had sustainable connections and community in your life, and that they'll never have that. They'll never be able to have access to that kind of stability in their life. And to grow old alone is something that's existentially, like, terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, you got the saying round the wrong way around. It's reject modernity, embrace tradition.
Oh, Jake is showing his fashion stripes.
What we've been doing
I told
is
you.
rejecting tradition and embracing modernity. But, like, the yearning is to go back the other way, right?
Yeah.
And, like, so I was watching a very sentimental film, what was it, a couple of nights ago, called Ascent of a Woman. That's like a pretty long-winded story. I won't give through the plot or anything, but at the end of it, basically, Al Pacino gives this fucking big impassioned speech at this fucking preppy school, talking about how they're sort of, you know, they're trying to basically raise the next leaders of the world, but the sort of culture that they an affect that they sort of encourage in these students is to sort of rat on each other, and as a, you know, everyone out for himself kind of mentality to sort of, you know, succeed and thrive in business or whatever the fuck you're doing. But he's sort of like, you know, my background's a fucking colonel or whatever, and if you're fucking in the shit, and when the shit hits the fan, how the fuck can you depend on everyone if everyone's out for them fucking selves? And, like, that, I believe, is definitely, like, a modern affect that has been socially engineered into us through all of, like, you know, fucking social media and everything else. And so when the shit does hit the fan, we are now, like, we don't have community, we don't have this and we don't have that, and we are in this modern state that they have fucking shaped for us, and it's kind of getting back to a yearning of being able to think we can depend on each other.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with your framing of, like, we should go back to the before 4 times or whatever.
That's not what I'm saying.
I think that he means more like the atomization and the
I agree. Yeah,
separation
exactly.
is the problem,
I agree.
not necessarily the, because I mean it's much more exacerbated now during COVID too. Like we've got. I'm working on a video about Zoom fatigue, which is ultimately like just kind of an excuse to talk about how alienation has been like ramped up like times 10 during COVID and so on and so forth. But like, I think that ultimately, like, it's kind of the center of the ideology that we're being given. But at the same time, when we're talking about like the sort of yearning for the yesteryear, a lot of it is kind of like the conservatives and conservative memes, things that have been disseminated by conservatives, kind of injecting themselves into that like yearning for human connection and sort of hijacking it.
Exactly. And that's so true. It's sort of a hijacking of the things that are us yearning for human connection. But it also goes deeper than that. Like, I don't mean to sort of get all esoteric and like occult here, but you know how I am. You know what I do. You know this. You know this is part of who I am. But yeah, for those of you who are like familiar with Aleister Crowley sort of had this aeonic cosmology where he sort of split history off into aeons, meaning periods of time where certain paradigms reign, or certain paradigms are, the overall sort of energy of humanity or whatever. And he sort of predicted that we're in the aeon right now of the child, that we obviously God is dead in the sort of Nietzschean sense, and we are now responsible for constructing our own values. We're like children in this paradigm where we no longer get our values handed to us from, these sort of official sources like religion, all of these things that sort of we're limiting sort of forces on human behavior and human values and things like that. We're now responsible for our own value system and constructing our own value system. And I feel like neoliberal capitalism sort of negated that and was like, the only value is consumption. The only value is the pleasure principle. And I feel like a lot of people are starting to feel like that's hollow and that it doesn't really provide them with the their spiritual or metaphysical needs are kind of going unmet within this paradigm. And we've not done the hard work of constructing or taking real responsibility for our freedom. And you can either be the Oedipal child that's kind of in this womb, this like neoliberal womb where all your needs are sort of catered to, but in this hollow sense, like a child sort of feeding every 3 hours.
Well,
Or
aesthetically.
Aesthetically, yeah. And that's where stuff like the trad wife thing comes from, like the trad wife meme, like the mommy kind of thing, that, or the daddy sort of meme or whatever. It's people's yearning for direction or protection, not willing to cultivate those things on their own and go on their own journey.
And the mommy daddy thing can appear very non-traditional. Like you can come in the sense of a person who is maybe expressing themselves with a totally different aesthetic. I've seen it in basically every area of like YouTube, of Twitter.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a realm that has women making content that isn't that. And a lot of men and non-binary people and everything in between. But it's heavily concentrated on women. And it's it could be in the conservative circles, and you mentioned that it's in the left-wing circles. It's very much in the left-wing circles, and you see it in different ways too. Like there's the kind of sexier version, there's the kind of more knowledgeable librarian-ish thing. Like there's a sort of fetishization of that.
That's my vibe.
Well, like the lady who knows a lot and debunks the bad things, Imbue me with your knowledge, mother.
Yeah.
Raise me. Why couldn't I have been raised by a librarian?
It's gross though, because it makes me terrified as a woman, and it makes me terrified for women who are younger than me and women who are like going to be born, basically, because the mommy is when you're a young child, you don't care about your mummy's past. You don't care about her future. You don't care about her feelings. You don't care about her emotions. She's just a thing that's there to serve your needs.
You just care about the facts.
Yeah, you care about you just care about the facts.
Just the facts, not your feelings.
Facts. You only care, and it's not because you're evil, but there's a certain amount of narcissism you have as a child because your survival is dependent upon that figure being in your life and the sustenance and the care that they give you. But the thing is, you're supposed to
of understanding the context anyway. It's not even.
But you're supposed to mature. You're supposed to mature out of that, and like you're supposed to realize later on in life that your parents are people with their own needs and their own wants and their own past and their own. And when people project that on women, they sort of create women as a whole into this sort of digital anima. So they have their anima in their mind, their sort of representation of the feminine. And all women online are sort of different manifestations of this anima. And they're projecting all of their like innate sort of unrealized feminine aspects onto these women. Because regardless of your gender, we all have masculine and feminine aspects in us. But they're like these unrealized feminine aspects within men usually that get projected onto these sort of digital like animas. And it's terrifying because it shows that there is that these men or non-binary people or whatever, they have a yearning for comfort, and they have a yearning for like love, and they have a yearning for those different things, reassurance, all of the validation, all of those things, but only the aesthetic dimension of it, not something that's holistic. And that terrifies me because it makes you sick. People are literally miserable.
Well, it's just as long as you get the kind of validation that you want, isn't it? It's not necessarily the kind of validation or whatever that you might need. It's sort of like...
Yeah, what's unquestioning.
It's like what's healthy for you.
Yeah.
You know, the church became a fucking shopping mall, and that might have served its purpose for like people, and they might have felt like they got that need, but was it maybe as holistic and fulfilling as a community of a church and reflecting on, you know, fucking philosophies of life and shit every week and shit?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, then you can even say the mall. The mall got hollowed out then.
well, you know, and the mall did get hollowed out, and now it's probably something else. In the 80s, it became the mall, and now it's probably...
Now we have something that is less meaning than the mall.
and now the church is Twitter, I guess. Like, I don't know. Like, but it's just, it's where everyone is. It's where everyone's hanging out, right? That's kind of...
philosophizing and reflecting and doing all of that stuff, which is kind of terrifying if you think about it in that way. But like, when you talk about anything about that has to do with values or tradition, it sort of rubs people on the left like the wrong way, because they associate it with, you, like you said, the sort of right-wing hijacking of these like innate desires that we have. But I think it's so important for us to talk about, because there obviously is a yearning that's sort of being channeled in a very, very awful direction. And like, it makes me think about like Japan. And this isn't me like bad mouthing Japan, blah, blah, blah. But like, obviously like capitalism is somewhat accelerated there, and the alienation aspect of it is way more normalized and entrenched. I mean, we're getting there. Well, one could even argue that we are there already. But like, you know, things like host cafes where like the parasocial relationship is basically normalized, idol culture as well, which people in the West are starting to get into, these sort of non-reciprocal relationships where you are pouring all of this energy and like intention into a thing that is alienating you from yourself and alienating you from like the world around you and cutting you off from like the joy of real connection. But usually those forms that people fixate on are traditional in some way, which is the ironic thing. They're usually like, they're either traditionally beautiful or they occupy some kind of traditional archetypical role. And yeah, it's really strange to me that a bunch of people who are sort of anti-tradition, the only way they can sort of engage in those bonds and those traditional kind of ways is parasocially or aesthetically.
Well, it's like all birthing bodies are powerful and important meme.
What's that supposed to mean? Like, explain to me what that's supposed to mean.
Well,
I'm confused by it.
It's got a trans man and a cis woman, and they're both pregnant, and it says all birthing bodies are powerful and important. And I think that it's basically kind of fetishizing pregnancy, personally. I don't think that like it makes anybody automatically powerful and important or better than other people, because a lot of people who want to have kids can't have kids, and that does not make them less important.
No, of course not. But I understand because like, I mean, that's another thing that I've sort of noticed is that in our culture, we've kind of like lost a certain respect for mothers that we used to have. Like, I've seen, especially in the way pregnant women are talked about and treated, like in the past, people kind of understood and had reverence for the fact that we all come into the world through a womb.
Well, it's respect though. It's not like black girl magic bullshit.
Yeah, not
it's
black
like
girl magic.
Respect
Yeah,
is a different thing. I don't think that this meme is respect, personally.
no, but those two things get like it gets equated. They get like sort of confused. Like, there are people who think respect is black girl magic shit and being over fetishizing or over praising an arbitrary characteristic, whereas it's just respect is really just a quiet understanding. Like, being a mother is difficult. Like, you have to give up a large chunk of your life in order to nurture another human being so that they're viable and active and healthy in the world. And I think that there should be a certain quiet understanding and respect for that role. And it doesn't necessarily matter who's occupying that role, because obviously people will make gender arguments that doesn't necessarily mean female or blah, blah, blah. Fine, whatever. But that role in and of itself is something that needs respect. That needs fucking respect, in my opinion. But people would say, oh, that's you being traditional and blah, blah, blah. And blah, blah, blah. But I don't care. Like, that not everything in the past or not everything that we used to have is bad. I feel like we throw the baby out with the bathwater a lot of time.
Well, that's kind of the exact point I'm trying to get on. And I think the sort of area you've touched on, like, gets to it exactly. It's sort of like understanding the value of something traditional like the family, but understanding and accepting that can come in all shapes and sizes, and it doesn't have this one moniker of thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah,
Like,
instead of creating an essentialism.
Yeah,
where,
exactly.
Like, there's one form that is good and then all other forms are bad.
exactly. It's just family is great, and we should honor that, and we should, like, hold reverence for that, and in whatever form that takes, and and
because it's necessary. And the thing is, most of the people who are like smash the family, abolish the family, blah blah blah, they not only do they not understand that concept in Marxism, and they're sort of misrepresenting what it means.
No,
the majority
really
of them,
don't.
the majority of people who say that shit are like upper class or middle class, like
they
PMC.
can afford to smash their family.
Well, even then, most of them don't, because if you look at people in
yes,
that
exactly.
class
They have an
bracket,
inheritance. They
No,
get
not
shit
just
from their
that.
fucking family.
but not just that, even then, most of the people that come from that sort of middle class, educated class bracket are the ones who are the most likely to pair off and get married and have families. You know why?
That's
Because they
true.
they realize that it's an important social bond, and it also benefits them economically. So they're basically telling poor people, remain alienated, remain alone, remain cut off from your communities. Don't, shun
Absolutely.
all social bonds. They're the ones who are telling you that shit when they're actually the ones actually going out and doing the shit they know is going to sort of help them have viable, quote unquote, lives under capitalism. And if we had a different system, then of course
Well,
there would
that's
be...
the bourgeois family.
Yeah,
that's
that's the
literally the
bourgeois.
family.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of Engels. The origin of family,
Yeah.
private property, and the state. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, the family has been hollowed out for the working class. They don't have the family. The family that they want to abolish is the one that is based entirely in wealth and inheritance, etc.
Yeah.
The one that is specifically based on coercive economic relations.
Yeah.
That's what they want to abolish.
Of course, people are going to have different forms, but you need people, which is the important thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the form of like the nuclear family. It doesn't have to involve children. It doesn't have to involve anything. But you need people in your life. You need strong relationships in your life. You need people who you can depend on and who are gonna be there for you in the long run. Because life is hard. Life is really hard without that.
Like, another example I'll give you is like understanding that toxic masculinity is a thing and can be expressed, but also having reverence for brotherhood and like,
Yeah.
having those
Yes.
strong male bonds and stuff with other fucking dudes, because that's important for you as a man if you identify that way or whatever. If you
I'd
wanna-
even say just from like a person expressing a masculinity, because I would say that there's probably women who have that exact same kind of fraternity across
Exactly.
gender lines. And I think that
Exactly.
it's frankly like the idea that like you're just not supposed to express that is bullshit. And I think that we have a lot of people who really try to exert pressure on that, like all masculinity is toxic, or toxic masculinity is the expression of masculinity.
They even tried to medicalize it. Like there were fucking companies that were like making anti-toxic masculinity pills to like sedate people and shit like that.
Well,
And
they tried to pin it on chemistry entirely. There was the whole testosterone. It's testosterone, which is like the fucking like
women have testosterone.
yeah, women have testosterone.
There are even women who have like higher testosterone on average as well. Like that's not like that's not scientific.
It's fucking monstrous.
But like at the same time, I understand what you're saying, because I feel the same. I feel the same yearning a lot for female friendship and the sort of supportive. And it's only because of the sort of cultures that men and women have developed over the centuries because of their roles. So there are certain cultures that have emerged, and certain things that if you fall on that side of the spectrum, you're going to experience. Well, so with my male friends, and most of my friends are guys, like I don't have a lot of female friends, like the majority of my friends are guys. With my male
You're
friends,
not like the other girls, Angie.
I'm not actually. A lot of my guy, I don't know, because I'm kind of a bit of a laddie kind of girl in that regard. Like I'm more, I get on with guys a lot better, especially because I'm quite remote. For a femoid, I'm quite like unemotional, and I like that guys are somewhat uncomplicated in that regard. But I do also have that feminine side of me that wants to express itself. So when I'm like around my guy friends and I'm like, I'm really sad and I'm like having a really hard time, they're like, oh my God, get the fuck out of here. And then I
open a beer with their teeth and they're like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Well, yeah, that's literally what happens. Or they're like, oh, you just like need like you just you just need to like smoke some weed, you'll be fine, type of thing. But then like when I'm around my female friend, my femoid friends, they're like, oh, do you want us to like hold space for you? And like that's nice sometimes, you know? And like
I'm just happy we were all able to come together in this space.
do you want us to hold space?
Yeah. Could somebody hold my space for me, please? Like I got too much space in my arms. I'm going to do something awesome, and it's just like, how do I hold all this space?
Because if I wasn't doing this and I had really gotten into that neoliberal paradigm, I would be a girl boss. Like I have that kind of girl boss kind of personality. And before, like in my younger days, I swallowed a lot of that like lean in feminism shit, basically, which was like reject everything about you that could be considered feminine, because all of those things make you weak and they allowed this horrible patriarchal world to exploit you. If you want to really compete in the world of business and media, you need to basically act as much as you can like a man. In that sense. So like I kind of repressed the softer side of myself because of that. But then like as I've been doing this job, I've obviously, because I don't work in an office anymore and I'm not out in the world doing that anymore. My work is mainly done at home. I've become a lot more domestic in the last few years and sort of centered in the home. And I find myself actually kind of enjoying that role a lot. And then I find myself having discomfort with it. But because I've been told that doing that stuff makes you weak. If you're doing that, then your partner is going to exploit you. If you're enjoying domesticity, then you're giving up time that could be spent out there making money and conquering the world and being a girl boss. And it does create a lot of confusion and struggle and heartache when you're not allowed to choose for yourself what you want for your life.
Well, they take that away from
alienated young women out there.
Yeah, and their names are Angie.
They take that decision away through fucking austerity and then the encouragement of hustle culture. Yeah. You gotta hustle just to fucking survive now and make your fucking money. Most women don't have even the opportunity to think about that sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Like two incomes in a
you gotta
fucking
get an
household
app
is
and
like
fucking like grind all day to have money at the end of the month.
yeah, get on your delivery route. You know what I mean? Like everyone's fucking hustling.
Pick
in
the
some
groceries, deliver the fast food, drive people to places.
It's true. Now, because the economy demands it, like, you know, two people in a household working, you know, but at the same time, the culture bombards you with these images of femininity and feminine luxury. But if you're a working woman, you can't have that stuff. So it creates this sort of cognitive dissonance where you are like, actually, I hate those girls who are pretty because they're fucking bitches. Whereas you may actually want to lean into your femininity, but you can't because you're in a fucking situation where you're sacrificing it in order to compete in a different sort of paradigm and a different sort of world.
And then you have some weirdo on a podcast telling you it's like tradcath adjacent, and people are like, what the fuck is going on?
I feel like it's different everywhere and it's accepted in a different way everywhere. And the way some places it's just seen as a straight transaction, like Japan you were mentioning earlier, like the latest not the latest season of Agretsuko, the whole show of Agretsuko is about this working class girl that got this job at this company that she's making some money on to make by, but she doesn't want to work anymore because it's fucking soul crushing. And so what she really wants is to find a husband so she doesn't have to work anymore. Like that is literally just, she comes out and just says that. Do you know what I mean?
But it's
And
not
so
that
it's-
she doesn't want to work. It's not that she wants to just find a husband. It's that she feels it's the only way
to escape
to escape
alienating work
alienating
and
work,
escape a soul crushing, like, you know, salary woman or salary. I don't know what the
Which is an
equivalent term for that
example
is in-
of an incentive.
Again, the whole point of the Ingalls book is not to abolish familial connections, but these coercive economic relationships that force these connections. Like the being in a family is not like a moral decision. The point here is like, are we doing it because we want to do it, or are we doing it because we have to? Like Ingalls was like pretty specifically on the idea that women were forced into this situation because it was the way to survive. But like, especially in that context, but really in our context as well, it's not a moral decision.
Yeah, but it's as if you can't make the moral decision. The moral decision is taken out of your hands. You're sort of
Exactly.
ushered into things, and it's hard for you to unpick what's yours and what isn't, which is why people end up hating modernity or they end up hating tradition. And they can't necessarily choose what suits them from both because they see both as soul-crushing and alienating. And both can be very soul-crushing and alienating. What isn't soul-crushing and alienating is sort of choosing what you want to do. And I mean, for men, it's also hard because it's like in Japan, especially because there's that like weird like cross intersection between traditional Japanese values and Japanese culture and also late capitalism. You know, traditionally in Japan, the man is the provider. He's the head of the house. And if a man doesn't feel like he can economically compete, if a man doesn't feel as if he has enough to provide a woman and a family, he will often retreat into himself and become more interested in those Oedipal fixations like pornography and, you know, simulated sexuality and all of those things, because he doesn't feel like he has anything to offer. He's not economically viable and he feels cucked by the fact that he's not economically viable, and his confidence is shot by and these and it's not as if these men aren't, you know, don't have stuff to offer and they're not good people and they're not people who would make wonderful fathers, or if they don't choose to be fathers, wonderful partners to other women or men or whatever the fuck. It's that their confidence is crippled because they don't feel as if they can occupy the role that they desire because of finances. And that must be difficult because we talk about women a lot in our culture, but there's a fuck ton of pressure on men to fucking perform and provide and give even still.
Well, because if you can't do all that stuff, you're a fucking useless person and you're like a leech on society essentially. And that's like what people view like disabled people on benefits and shit as. That's like the general fucking view of it. Like, people like say, oh, you know, like I really care about this and that. And it's like, but I mean, you've conservative fucking leaders for the last, 12 years now that have, or 10 years, or however the fuck long it's been since we've had this fucking disaster of austerity begin, that have just taken away those people's benefits fucking like every single fucking chance they get. So you don't. You know what I mean? Like, we don't care about it. Because if we did, then we would make it a priority. Like, it's the same thing with, like, veterans in America.
Yeah, that's where you really see the limitations of the conservative ideology. The whole, like, the response to this, like, they acknowledge it. They're like, yes, there are all these alienated young men. But then the thing that they come back with is, you need to stand up straight with your shoulders back.
There's an element of both, in my opinion, is a desire to escape the Oedipal cocoon and start living, while also pursuing the kind of overall goal of improving everyone's collective material conditions. Because unfortunately, just changing our mentality and just changing what we do isn't going to change our system.
No.
And the system is where values flow from in the first place. If you change the system, then the values automatically shift alongside the system.
You're getting into base and superstructure.
Yeah, base and superstructure.
You base, your economic base, the place where all of the actual like decisions are made, the place where all the power is held, that stuff dictates. And while the superstructure can have some effect on it, it's always cyclical, and the base will only adapt to like an aesthetic want from
Yeah.
the culture. Like the culture can try to dictate some change on the base, but
Yeah.
all it ultimately does is just incorporate that want and spew it back out.
Yeah.
And everybody consumes it and they think, oh my God, this is so fucking great. They're fucking acknowledging my shit and now everything's so much better. But they're still going to work and work's becoming worse and worse all the fucking time. You mentioned hustle, quote unquote culture, but it's really just the gig economy on fucking steroids, and it's everything's fucking terrible. Like, and it keeps getting worse, and people think it's progress because their shit is acknowledged in some way.
But it fucks up these gendered dynamics in a way that makes people become absolutely nihilistic. And as someone who sort of likes to troll the sort of cheeky, memey, weirdy corners of like Twitter and like Reddit, both men and women, and I'm sorry that I'm not speaking for other sort of hegemonic experiences, because that's not what is my experience, so I'm not going to try to. But speaking from what I observe in terms of both men and women, they're both absolutely nihilistic about each other. And this stuff happened in Japan. It happens in Japan where men and women also have this nihilistic view of one another, and you see this happen in cultures that have aging populations, where the dynamic between men and women is obstructed by these economic forces, especially in cultures where marriage is sort of seen as a transactional thing. And by transactional, I'm not putting a moral judgment on it, because all relationships have some aspect of transactionalism in them. It's just that they get exacerbated by the system.
They get subsumed by the market. Ideology. It transforms it from humans definitely do have some sort of like back and forth. Like, I get this out of this, you get this out of this. But like,
when you have to raise offspring, especially in a relationship, when you have to raise offspring,
you have to make agreements. You have to make, it's not something that like yes, there absolutely is transactions in a relationship, but like, if you run that kind of a thing through a market dynamic, you're talking about it having something like exchange value placed on it, like some sort of actual metric of value. And that's not really how things just like naturally occurred. That is an invention of like liberal economists, like theorists and philosophers.
Even I'm referring to it in an evolutionary biology sense. Like, you have to if the whole point of fucking the union between man and woman is to produce offspring in terms of the continuation of the species, blah blah blah, and there's a transactional element to that. You want to know that the person is going to stick around in order to provide for because human children are vulnerable and they also take a long time to mature, and there needs to be someone who's going to stick around in order to make sure that they don't die. So there's an element of transactionalism to it, but it gets exacerbated by, like you said, the culture, the market, the economic system, all of those. An
exchange value doesn't have to be assigned to any of that stuff. The transaction isn't really a quote unquote transaction in the modern sense, but more just a thing that people like. Everybody has needs and wants and things, and a friendship is two ways, and a relationship is two ways, and like a human relationship is a certain thing, and then capitalism through its various ideologies, market ideology, like consumerism, et cetera, those types of things specifically go, hey, look at that specific need that is being expressed as a commodity, like as something that conforms specifically to the ideological dynamics of how things work today, as opposed to something that we look at as like just a natural human function. I think that's a distinction that people have a lot of trouble with.
At the same time, the systematic choices and policy also makes different types of transactions appear across the institution of marriage.
Oh, for sure.
There is an entire reality show running for how many seasons now based on the transaction of getting into America or going to somewhere else.
90 Day Fiancé.
Yeah, 90 Day Fiancé.
That's my shit.
And some of them are genuine. Some of them are genuine.
Yeah.
Some of them totally are, and some of them are not. Some of them, and where does even the distrust that some of them are not come from? It comes from an arbitrary fucking immigration policy that like is fucking punishing and like fucking unforgiving and impossible to really navigate the fucking normal ways through without being of a certain fucking class, essentially, or at least trying to get yourself to a certain class. There's through policy and through the fucking systematic, the way the system's set up, these new transactions of marriage have now appeared of like, I want to live there, where the opportunities are, where I can get out of my country, where I've got a better prospects. Even if I discard this person, this husband, this wife, I'm now in a land, I'm now in a place where I can better serve myself.
Well, that's the sort of the crux of what I was getting at, is that a lot of these systematic incentives make men and women nihilistic about one another, because there's no examination of the system in and of itself. They sort of see it as shitty male behavior, or like women be shopping sort of like behavior.
The American people are tired of women.
Yeah. Yeah, literally. It's like, it's the sort of thing where it's like women be shopping, or like all men are trash type of thing, rather than sort of examining the sort of systemic things that make people nihilistic about one another.
It lifestyle markets the genders.
Yeah, it does. It does. Like,
and
that
the other gender is the out group.
Yeah, the out group, and then the in group, and blah, blah, blah. It's sort of, and then, I mean, when you see some of the despair shit that people tweet, or like the incel kind of thing, you know, these are people who are lashing out because of a thing that they want, that they feel that they'll never be able to have or gain access to. Even a lot of, like I said at the beginning, the anti-natalist stuff. For a lot of these people, not all of the people who have that view, but for a lot of them, it's like, oh, well, I really want that, but I never feel like I'll be able to have it.
It's not really just a material thing. Like, I can't get a house, so I won't want to raise a child when I'm in a shared flat in London. It's also, you know, it looks like the world is actually about to end. Yeah. Like, ecologically, like, it looks like the world is getting to a point where there's going to be more intense weather, and like, it's going to make it inhabitable for human beings. So isn't it kind of irresponsible for me to bring another life into this stage of the earth when it's just going to suffer through all of these crazy things? And for me, it's so fucking pessimistic that I couldn't get up in the morning if I felt like that, because it's just so utterly soul-crushingly depressing, like, to accept that fact.
Yeah, I feel like having a kid is saying, I believe in the future. I believe things can get better. Yes. I believe in the hope of the future.
I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky.
Oh, shush you. What was I saying? And saying I don't want to have a kid simply because I believe that there's gonna be no future. Then why are you? That's like you've given into Thanatos. You've given into the death drive. Why, like, you completely subsumed yourself in this sort of down the line. And that's what this sort of nihilism that has sort of been embraced by the neoliberal paradigm following the secular age and all of these things is. It's sort of, instead of people embracing the responsibility of, oh, okay, we may be alone in the universe, there is no God. Instead of people embracing the responsibility for living the best life they can, they're like, nah, fuck it. Thanatos, like, give me a handshake, basically.
Well, then on top of that, the opportunities for building a life, you're not given the choice to do that stuff. Yeah, like, you're given the resources that, you know, put you in one of the two positions. That's really why it's ideal. Like you mentioned them, I mentioned them lifestyle marketing the two genders. That's why that's ideal. Why there's so much pushback on the idea that anything might contradict that binary, because that binary is fucking easy as shit for them to maintain. It's fucking easy as shit for them to say, you know, there is no like up from here. It's this one or this one. The more you have to think of life in those terms, where it's this choice or this choice, these choices that have been presented to us, the more that lack of responsibility for creating your own life, the less self-actualization you're actually capable of doing, it feels less abnormal. It feels less like anybody actually gets the chance to be who they want to be. And it reinforces that life, that nihilism.
But people feel, even the people who sort of reject those binaries, they're even caught down consumption and consumer paths, and they're even they even have trouble self-actualizing, because it's almost impossible to create values that are rooted in true kind of self-actualization under this system.
That's what we were talking about with the base and superstructure. Like, you start creating the new demands, and what capitalism does, instead of, say like, oh, I guess we have to change the structure, they go, oh, so you want to self-actualize in a different way. Let's give you a consumption path. And that can be a different choice. And instead of 2 choices, there's 3 choices. But there's really 2 choices, and then the small choice for those people who absolutely will not take those 2 choices. They need a way to handle those people. And that's what a lot of this other shit is. It's not that like the drive is invalid or the actual internal like feeling is, but the path that is given to, and this is why when I talk about non-binary shit, I say I'm non-binary and people get mad at me all the same, is because I look at that shit very much as lifestyle marketing and as consumption, and it pisses me the fuck off because it's not self-actualization. It's just another consumer product. It's just a new essentialism that includes another choice, and that choice again is discouraged because it's not as profitable as the 2 main choices that they've been working on for fucking centuries now, and like, it's not self-actualizing. It's not any of that shit. It's literally the same thing with a different aesthetic.
It is. It's definitely. But that's the thing, is these aesthetic choices are all people feel that they have to satiate.
It's because that's all they're given.
Yeah, it's all they're given.
And we aren't thinking about it in terms of taking.
Yeah.
We're thinking about it in terms of choosing what we're given the opportunity to choose from.
Yeah.
And that is like the fundamental nihilism, I think, that you're really getting at.
Yeah, but that's the thing. There are moments of lucidity within the illusion. And they oftentimes come through engaging with things that you may have shunned or aren't necessarily comfortable with. Like, I was talking to Jake about it the other day. Like, my mom has been in England now for the last year. She was trapped here because of lockdown, but she normally doesn't live here. She either is in America or in Nigeria. And I've managed to spend quite a bit of time with her since she's been here. She just recently went back to Nigeria, which was quite sad. But yeah, like she is an evangelical Christian. And, when I was young, I remember thinking like, as I need to get as far away from you as possible. And the further I get away from you, the more myself I actually am. Like, I'm self-actualizing by sort of cutting myself off from my mom. And I realized that for most of my adult life, I hadn't really spent any real time with her. But that now, as an adult, as a 26-year-old, spending a lot of time with her, I actually realized, shit, like, you're a part of me. And you're also some of the beautiful parts of me. And even though I don't agree with you on some fundamental theological or philosophical things, there's still a lot of value that you add to my life in this relationship, and a lot that I can learn from the ways that you behave and act. Like, I noticed, because my social life in the UK, it's buoyant, but it's not super buoyant. Like, I have friends and stuff, but I'm like your typical insular kind of millennial. And I realized that my mom has, when she's here, even though she doesn't live in this country, she has more friends than me. She has more bonds than me. She goes and sees more people than I do. And I used to make fun of her because she would go to all these classes and she would do all these activities and stuff. But I was like, she's managed to create this buoyant social network for herself as an adult, and like really observing her and being like, this is the stuff that like keeps her sane. This is the stuff that add values to her life. This is how she does self-care. This is how she takes care of herself. It sort of gave me lessons of how I can enrich my life. And like I said, like, I looked down on her because I was like, you're just like an old fogey and like you don't know anything and you're not cool. But there's so much that you can learn from the way people, do in your family do things.
I have I have a friend within my group of friends that is really into Yu-Gi-Oh! And a lot of my other friends kind of take the piss out of him that he's very regimented about meeting up with his Yu-Gi-Oh! Group on his Wednesday nights at the card shop or whatever, wherever they play their games, and they have their night of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's just like, oh, what, we all go down the pub and all the rest of it, and we all meet each other, like, why do you need to do this? It's like, well, because those people don't go down the pub, and like I'm friends with them, and so like I want to maintain that, and like not only that, but this is a great activity where I get to meet other people and new people and people from all sorts of walks of life just through this weird, random, fucking niche thing. So like, yeah, fucking, I like Yu-Gi-Oh! Fuck you, and it's just like respect, my dude, absolute respect. And it might sound fucking lame and really sad, but I was literally on the edge of really getting into Magic the Gathering just before lockdown for the exact same reasons. But then, yeah, lockdown happened, and I was like, well, I can't buy a deck and fucking go and meet anyone now, so I'll do it when it's over. And I'm still, to be honest, that's one of the things about fucking lockdown lifting that I'm actually really looking forward to, is getting really into Magic the Gathering and like meeting lots of other nerds.
I forbid it. I forbid it. Not on my watch, Jake.
Well,
You'll never
all of
ever.
my work is about how that's also subsumed by
Getting into some weird fandom. But that's the thing is people I'm just joking. You don't need to defend your like fucking weird like sweaty goth bullshit.
Oh my god.
Okay,
well, it's
you
the
don't
thing
need to
that
defend it.
replaces what we used to have.
Yeah.
Like,
That's what I'm saying.
Like, I mean, it's not. To go back to what we're just saying, you don't really have a choice. If you want to participate in some form of community, that's a form of community that you have the opportunity to participate in now. And that's the overall criticism. That's the problem. It's not like you're choosing to be a fan and that makes you bad. That's usually what people take away from it. But the thing is this is the only option given. Like, it's an alienated presence. It's an alienated community. It's alienated consumption. It's alienated enjoyment. Like, it's all of this shit being done under the direction of capital. Like, you're doing it through Yu-Gi-Oh, meaning there are certain rules, there are certain incentives. You have to buy more Yu-Gi-Oh, you have to do more Magic of the Gathering.
Yeah.
There's a continual consumption pattern built into the community. And it's not that you're bad for participating in that. And it's not that non-binary people are bad for participating in that. Like, to go back to what I was just saying a minute ago, it's that they've figured out how to make it so that when you have that urge, it makes them money and you never get what you want completely.
Yeah, it's true. And that's the thing that sort of brings it back to the whole, like, you know, the modern affect, as I would call it, like the way that people sort of are these days. Like, people are very, very sad and disconnected and lonely, but at the same time, so averse to the idea of the experience of any sort of social pain or social rejection that they just sort of shut themselves in themselves, and they would much rather explore these alienated options for human connection than
because you can just shut it right off at any time.
At any time,
you
and
can cancel it.
Yeah, and there's all you
cancel
can
my
cancel it.
subscription.
Yeah, and you're also in a place where people are not going to reject you, and where you're not going to have to experience the pain of being misunderstood. But like I always say, like there has to, like you have to develop a some form of.
But I like using the red character in Among Us. Why does everyone hate me for using the red character in Among Us?
You have to develop some form of resilience towards social pain and rejection, and I feel like people of our parents' generation had to do that to an extent because there was no internet and there wasn't like there weren't the plethora of alienated options for community. So if you didn't try to create and establish bonds, it meant loneliness, and it meant prolonged loneliness. And I feel like a lot of people in our generation as well also feel immortal, and they also don't feel the sense of their mortality. They also feel as if they'll always be young too. And you're not always going to be young, you know, either.
No.
You're not. You're going to...
When I go into the store and I buy booze, I'm not 40 years old. I'm younger than 40 years old. However, they don't ask me for an ID because I have gray hair. Instead, they go over to the machine and they press a couple of buttons. And I noticed this one button come up. It says, verified over 40. And they press it. And I'm always like, why are you killing me slowly with that button?
Oh, no.
Like, every time you press that button, guys, you're killing me. I am not 40 years old.
Oh, man. I still get carded, so,
I do not.
You know.
I have gray hair.
Every time they press that button, another gray hair comes
Yeah,
up.
it's just like they're accelerating it for me. They're making it worse. They're exacerbating the problem.
Jake's getting a couple of gray hairs.
Look, when I've had a particularly stressful week, I might have a couple grey hairs that spout out, yeah, but that's pretty natural.
You're
I feel
saying
like.
it's my fault.
I'm not saying it's your
you
fault.
do. Whenever you get, I'm like, babe, you have like a gray hair. You're like, yeah, this is what you do to me, Angie. This is how you.
Yeah, why can't you make a good apple crumble, Angie?
Tell me about it, right? Those grey hairs would recede in a moment with a fucking warm apple crumble.
He fucking says.
My feelings
Oh,
are I'm
amazing.
experiencing social pain and emotional injury right now. This is why I don't try.
I'm so sorry that I am the kind of shit stirrer that I am.
I'm gonna make digital alienated apple crumble instead.
Pixel art of apple crumble.
I'm gonna download Cooking Mama again.
But I know what you mean about the needing to gather more magic once you get into gathering magic. and it being this capitalist, cultivated, alienated form of community and the rest of it. I definitely understand that. But if the pub isn't exactly much different, you still have to keep buying
absolutely
drinks.
not.
So it's... Do you know what I mean?
You are 100%. You are 100% correct about that. And that's really the accomplishment of
But
capitalism.
actually, I disagree.
Well, it's not.
I
that
disagree
this makes
because
the going to the pub bad.
I disagree about the pub as an establishment specifically because they're owned usually by they used to be anyway, like the taverns.
They aren't now.
They aren't now, but they used to be sort of
back yonder, sweetheart.
back yonder.
Before fucking Weatherspoons and all these other sort of companies that then basically dress up pubs to look like indie pubs,
Yes.
but are actually owned by some large conglomerate that makes all of these pubs look like cute indie pubs.
That's the accomplishment of capitalism. That's the thing that it's managed to do. It's taken these ideas of community and it's found ways to make them not completely satisfying, to make them incredibly addicting, and to make it so that they make money off of it, most importantly. It's a cyclical consumption path.
I mean, it's sad though, because it's making people sick and also people are getting because you're working on a video about Zoom fatigue. My next video I've decided is going to be about stan culture. I just had the inspiration yesterday because Jake showed me Eminem's video Stan. I remember seeing it when I was a kid and be like, oh my God, this is such an intense, melodramatic story. Oh my God,
that
Stan.
shit was intense, but you know what? It's real as fuck. That's one of
I know
Eminem's
it is
crowning
but
achievements.
I don't know. I'm because I'm jaded and I'm an adult now. I'm shrouded in a million layers of irony. So it's kind of oh my God, this is a bit much. Especially at the end when he's damn. But it still inspired It still inspired
I think that's
me.
one of his fucking crown achievements. And I think it's gotten more relevant with time rather than...
It has, but it still inspired me to make a video on stan culture. And stan culture is something that specifically profits from this form of alienation because the figure of worship, the idol sort of acts as like Eminem in that context sort of acts as a representation of a demographic, alienated, poor white men. He was sort of the alienated, poor, mentally ill loner before the Joker. Yeah, you only get one shot. He was like the mentally ill loner before Arthur Fleck took that mantle from him. That's the thing. But the thing is, Eminem, that's his character. That's what he plays. And I'm sure that's also part of his past and what shaped him as an artist. But really and truly, he's an artist and he makes money and he plays shows and he hangs out with Dr. Dre and that's his life. But he still has to put on the I am a mentally ill alienated. And I'm sure to some extent he is, but it's not the totality of his personality. But he has to sell that because the whole point of this mode is to marketize aspects of yourself. And then the people who then are like, whoa, that's me. And that person represents a thing that I could become. That person represents the pin ultimate of, and all my alienation and all my suffering. You know, this person has gone through this transformation, this apotheosis, this hero's journey that's led them. And that's what they're putting, all of their alienation, their hopes, their dreams, their struggles are all represented by the idol. And like, that sort of takes the place of friendship. And then with parasocial sexual relationships or people who like kind of create fixations on people romantically or sexually, or it's sort of like a yearning for apotheosis, for redemption through another person, through an ideal. And real people start to look, they pale in comparison to the sort of digital anima. And it totally alienates you and saps your ability to engage with the world and with people. And that's so scary because it's becoming normalized. It's so normalized. Another thing that freaks me out is MTV's Catfish. Like, I get so freaked out every time I see like clips of that show on YouTube. I know that you've talked about it before, Peter.
I've been catfished.
Oh, you've been catfished, yeah. But that's a horrible experience to go through for somebody to be eliciting emotions from you and eliciting time and eliciting, effort and energy for it to just be not real. But then I start to think about the psychology of the catfish, the person who's actually doing this. And that's somebody who is genuinely trying to connect. But they're unable to. They can't unless it's through these mediated methods. And the thing about these mediated methods is like the reason why it's so easy to get close to somebody in these mediated methods is because you can put forward your best self, and you also tend to divulge more stuff that you wouldn't say to someone IRL face to face. You'll tell them like your innermost and things like that. And the fact is there are a lot of people who cannot connect except through these mediated mediums because they don't feel safe doing it IRL otherwise. But even then, there aren't even that many avenues to do IRL otherwise because you can't go down the pub. You can't pull a bird. It's weird.
There was a really cute suggestion that I heard on one of the podcasts I was listening to today that was essentially, why isn't there a Tinder for friends? Which is actually the sweetest fucking thing when you think about it.
Because have you ever been on a Tinder date before? It's horrifying.
No, it's the point, isn't it? You're not trying to fuck it. There's not expectations of this like grand thing. You're just trying to hang out with someone, maybe
the expectation in and of itself that an interaction with a complete stranger is going to amount to something, which is why Tinder sucks, because it's the expectation. Number one, you're putting forward the best. The algorithm puts forward the best aspect of yourself. It tends to match you with people who share your interests. Yeah, you're commodifying yourself. You share my interests.
You're not commodifying yourself. Technically, the company is commodifying you. You're just doing the labor under their direction.
And that's the thing is, you go into the meeting with somebody with the expectation, at least subconsciously, even if not consciously, that it's going to result in some form of romantic interaction or sexual interaction or something like that. And the thing is, the most lasting bonding encounters you have with people are with people where that expectation isn't even there, and you just encounter them and you're like, wow, I really like you, wow, you're really great, and you weren't expecting to make a friend that day. Like that feeling, that really pure feeling when you're like new at a school. And
that can even happen through apps and like chat and all that shit. Like,
yeah, it can
go into that shit without
without any expectations. That's happened to me.
That's
happened to me.
I've made more than a few friends that way.
Same here.
Where I'm just like, somebody says something to me and I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Exactly.
And it turns into a real conversation.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
and those are the most beautiful interactions because it's gone in without agenda.
they're also not directed by a platform. The platform isn't saying like, this thing is supposed to end a certain way. It usually happens on
organically.
Yeah.
But it's like that pure feeling of like when you're a kid and you're at a new school, or it's the first day of like school or whatever, and there are all these people around and you're like, oh my God, I'm so weird. Nobody's going to talk to me. And then you hear that little voice and it's someone saying, hi. And then they become your fucking best friend. It's these sort of chance encounters that are without agenda and that also entail a certain element of vulnerability, of reaching out. And sometimes you're going to reach out and you're going to fail. But what a beautiful thing to have been vulnerable. Like there's nothing more beautiful. You are at your most beautiful as a human being when you are vulnerable and when you are genuine. And even if that's met with resistance or rejection or with misunderstanding, you opened like a flower. And that's what we're here to fucking do. And I feel like people have lost sight of this and they've lost value of it, and the system has also subsumed those desires and perverted them, and so many people are getting hurt. Like if you see the bitter shit that I see people say about friendship and about romance online, like I mean whoa, like I mean you're so lucky.
People fucking hate the idea of being involved with other people because their expectation of being involved with other people is a consumer product. Like they're expecting exactly what they want out of that person. And it's because they're told that's what these relationships are by these various platforms that are commodifying them.
Exactly.
And it's a huge like life-shattering disappointment when it's not that.
And that's the thing with like people who are incels, or I don't even like the term incel. It's horrible. With people who haven't had romantic or connections or friendship connections in a long time, like people like Jordan Peterson will tell you that it's because of the fucking, he'll give you some decent advice about how you could improve yourself and how you could become more confident. But then he'll go on a tangent about how it's like the feminist Western, blah, 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 and create more resentment, which is the thing, is like the resentment is what you want to avoid, because that shit will drag you into a murky, black, inky void of self-loathing and also loathing and contempt for others. And what you want to do is to see your vulnerability as beautiful, no matter what that vulnerability gets met with. And you will attract those people into your life.
We rewatched that utterly incredible music video from like the early 2000s.
Oh yeah, another
the other day, Another Chance.
Yeah.
Is it? Oh
I love
my
that
fucking
music
god,
video.
where this woman's carrying around the massive heart around New York City,
Yeah.
and every time she sort of has to go somewhere, it gets smaller because she has to give a piece away to kind of
She
keep
gets
going,
rejected.
because she gets rejected all the time. And it just feels like everyone right now is like when she's like with the fucking small heart and is just like super
Yeah.
fucking down. And it's
She
hard.
goes- the whole point is this woman, she's like, she goes into the big bad city with this big open heart, but all the encounters she has like makes her heart shrink. And then she meets a guy who seemingly like reaches out to her, and you know, her heart grows again. But then he ends up sort of he sees how big her heart is, and he's terrified by the size of it because he doesn't have that. And then he like runs away from her, and then she's sort of left like, I don't remember how it ends, but I think she sort of like, her heart shrinks, or maybe it grows. I don't remember what the fuck happened. But it's called Another Chance. It's like a early 2000s dance hit. And it has like the most like beautiful beats. But that's what everyone is, basically. Nobody is born closed off or cynical, but like we become that way. And everything, what is it?
Roger Sanchez,
Yeah.
Another Chance.
Yeah. Roger Sanchez is Another Chance. Like that music video, like nobody is born with a closed heart. Like experiences, like familial experiences, social experiences. There are all kinds of experiences that cause us to resent other people, resent ourselves. But like, you're at your most beautiful when you're open. Like even in things like drama, like actors, you know, people who we're drawn to, it's because they're vulnerable. They're able to show us their innermost, basically, and we reward them for it. That's like the whole job of acting or whatever. And like, you're at your most beautiful when you're vulnerable.
For sure. That's a pretty nice, warming, sincere Angie Speaks point to round up.
Guys, people are dying.
It's like everyone's been fucking beaten with, and they've got that small heart. But to make community again and to make connection again, you have to go into things with a big open heart. That's just the fucking truth of it, you know. Like,
And not in this
Maka.
like,
Or
what's that?
make community great again.
Yes, Maka.
It's not Maka. I was very wrong about that.
It's odd too, because like you like, and not in this like stupid like bread tube like false wholesomeness way of like, oh, I have love for my fellow man. Like it's about being open to allow chance encounters for like genuine social bonds to emerge, because you're not going to like everyone. You're not supposed to like everyone. Like you're supposed to be mean, and you're supposed to be loving. You're everything. You're a human
You're supposed
being.
to be everything. You're supposed to be a multi-dimensional human.
Yes. And that's the thing
And
about
I'm
bread.
coming.
Yes, I love that. And that's the thing about BreadTube and that whole paradigm, is it tells you that you're supposed to be open and you're supposed to love everyone. And you can't love everyone. You're just not going to like people. Like there's some people you're just not going to
Well, that
fucking
comes
like.
along with like a complete and total like kibosh on heterodoxy, which is just like, that's not possible. Like people believe different things. Like the sooner people understand that about life, the better.
Yeah.
of course. But what I was like, I definitely get what you mean. But if you still come at things with the small heart and you're closed off everything, like you're gonna perceive everything differently as well.
True.
So like if you go into everything in an until proven otherwise kind of mentality, which is like how I feel like I do genuinely try to approach social situations, just life in that way. Like until you've proven me that you're someone to not trust, I have no reason to not trust you, and I'm very open and completely honest with people.
It's true.
But then, but if you go into that thinking cynically, this person's going to fuck me over, or this person's going to be an asshole, this person's going to do something or be an asshole, or whatever, then you're already kind of in that space where this isn't going to have a fucking chance.
And that's
hell,
what
do you know what I mean?
That's what they have incentivized too.
Yeah.
You are supposed to look at everybody else's competition because they could take your place at whatever thing that you're doing. At the Magic thing, even the Magic the Gathering thing, there's a cool person there. They're the one that everyone likes. They have the most cards. They know what they're doing the best. You're supposed to look at the other people, even at that thing, even at this this subsumption of community is supposed to even be competitive itself. And that's everything. Every single goddamn thing in this fucking world.
It sounds callous to even say have an open heart, because this world punishes you for having an open heart. Like it punishes you for having principles. The system punishes you for having principles. Like us, for instance, like Low Society Podcast, me and Peter and our channels, and the sort of existential crisis that we've been going through in terms of rejecting the incentives of the system. Just because we reject the incentives of the system doesn't mean we're owed anything by it. We've rejected them, so we have to take responsibility for the fact that we're going to be less popular. We're going to have a harder time, because that's how it is. And if you have an open heart, you're going to have a harder time, but you have richer and more beautiful view and dimension of life. The same way, if you have principles, you have a richer and more holistic experience of the world as well.
You have a deeper sleep.
Yeah.
Because you got nothing fucking with you in your mind.
Exactly.
Yep.
And you get fulfillment. You get fulfillment too. You get more fulfillment. But it's difficult because Jake was making the example because he was angry. He was on Facebook and he was doing angry Facebook dad shit this morning, where he saw some dudes had bought like a bunch of PS5s, and he's shaking his head right now. Do you want to tell the story?
Look, I'm sorry.
They scalping
but
them?
Yeah. So like I'm saying, if Stalin was still making lists, I feel like the people that put up Facebook posts declaring that they'd got 10 PS5s when everyone was supposed to get one, they would be put on a list. That's all I'm saying.
Oh my God. So Jake wants to put...
Fuck those people. Like,
Jake
I'm
wants to put
sorry.
those
Like, I
rules.
don't mean to. I don't
get it.
mean to
Oh,
like
God.
put the personal.
Oh,
They're
God.
incentivized to do that.
Yeah, that's what I
get
was
why
telling
they do
Jake.
that.
That's
I
what I was
totally
telling
fucking
Jake.
get why they do that.
'Cause we were
But it
both-
still
we were
pisses
both
me the
arguing.
fuck off because I can't fucking do that. I can't
Yeah.
fucking buy 10 PS5s and
Yeah.
fucking make however like $6,000 or $7,000 off of it. Like I can't do that. And like,
But that's the
it
thing, is
pisses
they're
me the fuck off when I
incentivized
see
to.
it.
Because
They
Jake was like, these people are fucking scum, Angie. They should be fucking put against walls and shot. And I was like, dude, that's a bit much. Like, calm down. He was like, yeah, people like this, these fucking people, they're just fucking scum, aren't they? They're fucking scum of the earth. And I was like, you can't individualize it, because that's what they're incentivized to do. And just because you're
It's
doing
the
the
only
right
thing. Like, if you've got
Yeah.
the means to do it, you're supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, they act like, oh, this isn't something you're supposed to do. It's totally, because it creates more hype. It makes it into a much more like premium product that people covet and want. And people are like, they're scalping them for, $1,600-$1,700. All that does in people's minds is complete the marketing circle. Like, people are like, oh, so I guess it's worth that much money. When I get it later for $600, I am getting a deal. And it's like, it fucking sucks because it's all like connected in this consumption, like in this alienated consumption.
I know what you mean, but then like going back to like, again, a sense of trying to do things with an open heart and be in a community and going against the incentives to be essentially a good human being. At the beginning of the fucking pandemic, you had that Canadian couple, I think it was, basically buy out every single fucking bit of toilet paper and whatever fucking essential shit you would need and try to set up their own Amazon store so that everyone had to buy all of their shit through this fucking couple in their fucking Amazon store. And then pretty much the community got together and repossessed all their shit, because that's not how shit works. That's not how community fucking works. That's not like, do you know what I mean? I don't know, PS5 isn't exactly a fucking essential fucking, it's not toilet paper. So
No.
they're not getting much to their fucking houses to get the shit back. But it's still just like, that's a scummy thing to do, my dude. Especially just any other fucking time of the year, it would maybe be a slightly less scummy thing to do. But during a fucking pandemic, when manufacturing's under pressure and everything else is like fucked and you don't know when the rest of those fucking shit's going to be available for everyone else, that's just a real, like, I know the incentives there, but fuck me, dude. That's
It's a whole microcosm of everything, though, if you think about it. And replace toilet paper with capital, and you have like how everything has gone and how a proletarian revolution would form. Ideally, we would all understand, like, hey, that concentration of power, that concentration of fucking toilet paper, that is unjust. We need to do something about that, break into things, redistribute everything, and totally shift the mode. Now, obviously, in that kind of microcosm situation, you don't have the opportunity to totally shift the mode. You can redistribute the toilet paper, but ultimately the entire system still exists outside that ecosystem. Exactly. But, I mean, you can kind of get sort of at a base level what is going on with society, how power concentrates, and what really ultimately has to happen at some point. And those people weren't killed over their toilet paper hoarding.
No, exactly.
It wasn't about hating those people. It was about needing toilet paper. And that's the ultimate thing here.
So to just go into that metaphor one level deeper, I feel like everyone views, like, you know, capital and whatever, the essentials, but just they view them as PS5 and things that are luxurious that we can't actually really get or redistribute without really upsetting people, when in reality it's fucking toilet paper, dude, and we all need it, and it all needs to fucking get around.
But at the root of this whole kind of thing, and I think your real moral umbrage with this whole thing is the fact that it sort of flies in the face of the principle of community ethos. The idea that there's, like, you know, limited resources and we all need to be able to have, and, you know, enough to get by, and you don't need more than what you need. Basically, you don't need more than what you need. And there's that sort of innate sense of fairness and unfairness. And I mean, there are some people who would say we don't have that, but like they've done experiments on like toddlers, like where they will have like puppet shows, and they'll show one puppet doing something unfair to the other puppet. And 9 times out of 10, the children will react favorably to the puppet that's like doing the nice thing instead of the thing that's doing the unfair thing. So we have like an innate sense of like fairness and unfairness. But the system tells us to constantly override that sense. It tells us to constantly,
in order to survive on some level.
In order to survive on some level. Yeah, you have to.
Like, whether it's usually at a much smaller scale than buying all of the fucking toilet paper.
Yeah.
Or all of the PS5s for that. I mean, that's pretty fucking, that takes a little bit of an investment.
Okay, so the reason I got so upset about this, and no, let me just finish the fucking story, okay? Because the reason I got so upset about this, Peter, is because I was reading a fucking article. I can't remember if it was on Polygon or VG247 or one of those fucking websites. But basically, a bunch of people got to fucking gather on like Facebook and whatever and made these fucking buying groups where they were scalping up to 4,000 PlayStation 5s. So like, just the scale of it isn't just like this one guy that's got 10 of them. It's like there are people organizing to get thousands of them. And it's just like, that is a scale of just, that's just,
I mean, that's a beautiful community right there. They've really done a good job of creating a community.
I think the reason why Jake is upset is because...
In the PS5 scalping community, this is not a faux pas. It's
Jake
actually completely normal, completely encouraged. We love it in the PS5 scalping community.
Jake is upset because I said that I'm not buying him a PS5 for Christmas because I don't have £500 to spend on a fucking PS5. And then he was like, oh, babe, but I'll buy it, and it'll be like a Christmas present for both of us. And I was like, you are not spending like half of our rent on a fucking PlayStation. You'll wait until it becomes cheaper, or you'll buy Cyberpunk on your PC because you have a PC for a reason.
Yeah, I know. So
look at the pain in his voice.
It's not pain. I already figured out how I could affordably get a fucking digital version of the PS5. So it wasn't that, and it's not that I was gonna get it this month, and that's why I'm upset about it. It's just the general fucking.
Is it out already?
Yeah, it's out. That's why people are fucking doing it. Like, that's why people have got them and they're taking pictures of them and shit. But like, it's not because I don't have one that I'm upset. It's just the general, like, I wouldn't, like, that's just fucking a shitty thing to do, in my opinion. And I understand that you're incentivized and all the rest of it, but just fuck you to those fucking people that have done that. It's not
as soon as Jake gets the PS5, which he eventually will, and I won't be able to stop him, like, it's going to be like that scene from Toy Story where he's like, I don't want to play with you anymore. It's like the PS5 and the Switch. Because he was like, the PS4 and the Switch. Because he was like, I know a way, babe. I'm going to trade in the PS4 and the Switch in order to get the PS5. And I was like, you are not going to trade the Switch in because I play the Switch. Animal Crossing is on there for me. So no, you're not going to fucking take away my toy.
Yeah, I agree to not give away the Switch, but I am going to trade in the PS4 to get.
Well, I mean, you
PS5.
could play all the games on the PS5.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So
Groovy, smashing, yay capitalism.
yay,
Yay,
baby.
we're so principled and we're so sincere. I'm joking. do you have a PS5?
This episode sponsored by PlayStation 5.
We wish. Do you have a PS5
That would be
yet?
sweet money, wouldn't it?
That would be so good. When do they usually get cheaper?
It'll be a while. I'm gonna get the digital one. I'm not getting the disc drive one.
I'm
Fuck
not
this.
trying. Again, not an advert for PlayStation, but yeah, I'm not getting the disc drive one. It's like 350 quid, mate. It's not that much. Chuck in the PlayStation controllers and all the other bits and bobs I got for it. That's like 150 quid off. It's like 200 quid. That's fuck all. I spend that on an ounce of weed. That's not, you know.
That's why we're always fucking broke at the end of the month, because you spend too much money on weed. And now you want to get a fucking PlayStation. I don't have any
This is
expensive...
the poor people calculus. How do I get the game system? This is how it works.
I don't fucking have any expensive habits like that. Like, I don't smoke as much weed as Jake does. I'm not into technologies and gadgets and things like that. But you're the one who seems to... So I need to get into, like, I don't know... I need to get into fancy handbags.
Thank you for joining us on another fun episode of Low Society. If you like what you've heard and you want to hear more, join our $5 tier on our Patreon. If you just want to join our Discord and play silly games with me, whatever the fucking crazy shit I'm playing at the time. And Peter as well, sometimes, occasionally as well. And Angie sometimes. She does come and plays occasionally. Then come and join the Discord. If you're super lovely, then, join even more. And, I don't know, we can figure out whatever arrangement that you want. Just DM us. And yeah, thanks for listening. We'll see you again soon.
Peace out.
Goodbye.
And don't forget that love is important.
There we go.